Graphing when your Facebook friends are awake was trending at the top of Hacker News when Alex Hogue first posted it. Alex wrote a blog post about this piece of software he built that interacts with public Facebook APIs and uses latent information to detect when any of his friends are awake or asleep. As I read his blog post, I wanted to talk to Alex because his blog post was such a creative and technical piece of writing, and the software is so creative and technical also. It's surprising that someone would take the time to randomly inspect the elements of the Facebook homepage and then reverse engineer the way that Facebook sends data about statuses and then mine data from that reverse engineering and then create a bunch of graphs of that data, and Alex did all of these things. So today, Alex joins me to explain how and why he built this strange tool to graph when people are awake or asleep using public-facing Facebook data. Before we get to this episode, a few things. Software Weekly is a newsletter that we put out every Sunday evening to condense what happened in the world of software over the previous week. You can sign up for Software Weekly or join our Slack community, our thriving Slack community, at softwareengineeringdaily.com. Also, Software Engineering Daily is looking for sponsors, and if you're interested in advertising on the show, send me a message at softwareengineeringdaily@gmail.com. After a quick message from today's sponsor, we will get to this episode, Reverse Engineering Facebook with Alex Hogue. Podcasting full-time is a great career. But if I ever return to the normal world of work, Hired.com is where I will start my job hunt. Hired.com removes the frustration of searching for a job. You just fill out your profile and the jobs come to you. Facebook, Uber, and Stripe are a few of the companies that are hunting for engineers on Hired. Go to hired.com/sedaily to try it out and get an extra $1,000 signing bonus, just for using the URL for Software Engineering Daily listeners, which is hired.com/sedaily. So if you want to try it out, go to hired.com/sedaily. The demand for engineers is higher than the supply. And on hired.com, that translates to higher salaries and happier careers for the engineers who find a job on Hired. I used Hired to find a job before I became a full-time podcaster. And the experience was so good because Hired connected me with a talent advocate who worked with me to find a job that was a good fit. And the talent advocate answered my questions about negotiating salary and finding remote work, which was something that was really important to me at the time. So check out hired.com/sedaily and get a $1,000 signing bonus upon finding a job, which will be a great job that will give you the respect and the salary that you deserve as a great engineer. So check out hired.com/sedaily. It would support the show. And now let's get on with today's episode of Software Engineering Daily. Alex Hogue is a software engineer and an author of an open source project called Z's, which allows you to use data from Facebook to determine the sleep patterns of your friends. Alex, welcome to Software Engineering Daily.
Hi, thanks for having me here.
You wrote this project, and then you wrote a detailed blog post about it called Graphing When Your Facebook Friends Are Awake. Describe what you built.
So I built a program that you can leave running on your server or your laptop or whatever for a while. And if you've left it run after you've left it running long enough, it will give you a little graph for each of your Facebook friends. And on that graph, it'll show you at what times they're online, offline, or idle on Facebook. And that's the Facebook web client and also the mobile one and everything.
Why did you do this?
I was worried that somebody was going to ask me this. I don't really know. I just thought it would be interesting. One day I was looking at the Facebook web, like on Facebook.com. I was looking at the network requests that go to and from, just looking for interesting stuff instead of, going to a party or something. And I had a look and I saw that there was, this weird JSON data there, and I was like, oh, what does this do? What does this mean? Oh, it's when people are online on chat, and it's got 1 second accuracy. I wonder if I can get a lot of this, and you can.
Right. Okay. So let's start talking about the implementation of what you did. And there's some very interesting data mining and engineering behind how you hacked this project together. And the story starts with these green dots. Describe what this green dot that I'm referring to is on the Facebook UI and what it signifies.
Yeah, sure. So on Facebook.com, if you look on the sidebar thing to the right, you see a bunch of your friends, and some of them have little green dots next to their names, and some of them have numbers with maybe M after the number, or maybe H after the number. And what that is Facebook trying to tell you the green dot means this person is online right now, and the numbers should tell you how long it was since they were last online. And the numbers have, when they're displayed to you in the Facebook UI, have kind of a fuzzy accuracy. Like it'll say 1 hour, but it kind of means anywhere between 0 and 2 hours because it rounds to hours. I'm not sure how. And yes, that's what the green dots are.
And when a user is active on Facebook, a green dot appears next to their name, as you just said. And you decided to right-click on that dot and use the inspect element function that is available in any browser to find out more about it. So what happened when you inspected that green dot that indicated how active a user is on Facebook?
I should mention that inspecting the actual dot doesn't show anything. The dot is just displaying the data. When I inspected the page, I just had a look at all the different network requests that were going onto the page. So like Ajax that's being loaded, or like requests for scripts, that sort of thing. The actual green dot, I don't know. I've never inspected the green dot. I don't know what it actually looks like. The green dot is a metaphor. And the question was, what did I see? I found there's a endpoint that while you're on Facebook.com, your browser continuously hits called /pull. And that endpoint it's one of the ways in which the Facebook.com page live updates. So, if you get a notification on the Facebook page, if someone likes your page, if someone likes something you did, you get chat notifications, and you also get online, offline notifications. And I don't know about all of this, but some of all of that is through this one /pull endpoint. And that was interesting because if you try and just request, if you inspect the network request, you'll see that it just doesn't show any data. Like if you go and have a look at this, if you go and click on, oh, my browser's requesting this /pull thing, let's see what the response is. You just don't get a response. And that is, you don't get a response until you wait, between 1 and 20 seconds for the GET request to finish, because it's using this wacky thing called HTTP long polling, I think. Don't quote me on that. Some sort of wacky version of HTTP that lets you do a streaming GET request. So it kind of gives you data, but it doesn't close the connection, and that might throw you off if you're having a look around. And that did throw me off, but I eventually figured it out.
Do you have any idea why they were using long polling for that?
I had a look. I don't know, but I had a look at what this long polling thing is and what it all means. I think it's kind of like an alternative to WebSockets. If your browser doesn't support WebSockets, you can use this crazy HTTP streaming thing. But I don't really know why whoever architected this Facebook thing decided to use long polling instead of WebSockets. It could be that my browser just wasn't compatible and didn't have WebSockets. It could be that this is actually better for some reason because you could say HTTP instead of WebSocket land. No, I don't really know.
So every X intervals, this Facebook is pulling from this pull endpoint, this endpoint on some Facebook server from somewhere, and it's pulling data about the user's activity, or what? I think you mentioned some stuff that it's pulling, but what kinds of data is it pulling? Just refresh me on that, and what kinds of things is it building on the page using that data?
Sure. I don't really know what it's building, but I could have a guess. Here's what it's pulling, though. So when you make a request, firstly, it pulls lots of other stuff that I did not look at and I did not blog about. It pulls actual, the little Facebook news feed. No, not the news feed. The ticker thing in the top right corner. I don't know what it's called. The timeline thing. My friends call it the omniscience bar because you can see, yeah, that thing. I don't know what that thing's actually called. If you look in the /pull endpoint, you'll see already rendered HTML that just goes straight into that bar. And I had to filter all that out because I didn't care about that because you could just look at it. Although I was thinking about this, you could, since you have the already rendered HTML, you could do exactly what I did, except instead of for online offline status, for the omniscience bar, and have like a record of what happened on Facebook, like who liked which page and who commented on which thing, and you could use that to like reconstruct what was going on at the time. Anyway, that's not what you asked me. I'm sorry. The things that the endpoint shows you to do with your online offline status. I don't know how it chooses which users to give you, but it gives you some users, some of your friends, and it tells you for each of them a point in time and whether they're online, offline, or idle on each of the different clients. And the clients there's one magical thing just called status, and I don't know how that gets created, but it can be online, offline, or idle, or invisible. And similarly, there's web status and messenger status and Facebook app status and other status. I don't know what other is, but I'm guessing it's some sort of like maybe if you sign in with Facebook on somewhere, they can use the other status. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so these user IDs, they get mapped to multiple statuses. Like you said, there's web status, FB app status, messenger status, and other things. How many different ways are there for a user to engage with Facebook? And why is this relevant?
If all you look at is this endpoint, there are 5, right? Those ones that you just said. I think it's 5. And I don't know why they're relevant. I don't know what Facebook is doing with these things. I'm just some guy looking at random network requests.
Right. But the aggregation of this is that it aggregates into whether or not a user is active.
Well, there's the first one that you see is just called status, and I think that's the one that Facebook will actually show you, right? So there's in the green dot is telling you is their status active or not. And I had a brief look at the logs that I collected, like with my eyes, and I didn't find any instances where the status was not active, but some other like web messenger status or FB app status was active. So it's making me think that if any of the statuses are active, that the one called status is also going to be active.
From what you understand, how is Facebook conveying information between their servers and the different users in order to understand the status of these users with regard to web status or app status or messenger status?
How's Facebook conveying it? What do you mean?
So how, like, do you have any idea like how often their servers are communicating with with users, phones or their browsers in order to understand whether they're idle or not?
Oh, how frequently it polls your device? I don't know off the top of my head. My thing makes a request my Polar Logger thing that does this, I think by default makes a request every 1 second or 3 seconds or something. And it will usually only get like maybe a handful of things in that time. I have noticed this strange thing that happens sometimes where if somebody is online, you'll get a data point for them being online almost exactly every 3 minutes. So it's not exactly every 3 minutes, but it's 3 minutes plus or minus maybe 20 seconds. You'll get they're online, but then you get offline points in between there. So I don't really know what that is. That could be some sort of keep alive thing. That's kind of the only thing I found in terms of how frequently it polls.
Okay. And so as I understand, you started gathering data from this pull endpoint about basically all of your friends because you had access to all your friends, and these were the people who had green dots or not next to their name, which indicates that they had, data from the pull endpoint, being updated. So with, using this pull endpoint, you started to build objects over a span of time about specific people, timestamp, whether that person is online or not, which devices that they're using that represent whether they're online. So tell me more about this object, like these objects that you started to build for your friends.
Sure. One of the things I feel like I should point out is kind of to do with it's kind of like in video games, or like competitive video games. They always they try and draw the line somewhere as to what kind of mods am I allowed to have on my game, and generally the answer is if you can do it with a pencil and paper, then sure you can have a mod that also does it. And the reason I told you that wacky story is that the thing that I made is one of those things. Like, you could do what I did with a pencil and paper. You could sit there watching your friends being online and offline at your computer all the time and write down when they're offline and draw a graph yourself. Anyway, as for what I actually built, it's not. It's almost exactly the same as what the Facebook/pull endpoint gives you, but it's got one extra thing. So the things that I store, like on disk, are exactly the response from the Facebook endpoint, like the exact JSON that they give back, and also the time that it was given to me. So I can record a user and a time and what kind of online/offline status they have. But there's one extra thing that Facebook will sometimes give you, which is it's like a different packet. It's not really a packet. It's like a different JSON blob, where instead of saying, "Hey, this user is online right now on these devices," that corresponds to a green dot. Sometimes Facebook will send you some data that corresponds to one of those random times that you see on somebody's little messenger profile thing on Facebook chat. So if you see, the things that say, "Oh, this person was last online 1 hour ago," Facebook will sometimes give you a packet that represents that. And that's really much more useful than a packet that says they're online right now. Because if you know they were last online, say, 8 hours ago, which Facebook will sometimes tell you, then you actually have data points for every moment between now and 8 hours ago, right? They're offline all the time. The one thing about the recording that I'm doing is I'm not sure if I'm getting the complete picture, and there's no way for me to know if I'm getting the complete picture, right? I mean, and when Facebook tells me someone's online, they are online, but maybe they're online at other times, and Facebook just doesn't tell me, or my code's wrong or something. It's not easy for me to tell. And so it's those last active times that make it really easy to record when someone's asleep. Because if it's currently, 9 in the morning, and you get their last active like 10 hours ago, they're probably asleep that whole time. Well, maybe not at 9 in the morning, but some other time.
So when did you start thinking of using this log data to look at when people were asleep or not? Or did you just start collecting it and then started inferring things based off of it? Or how did you start to, how did it manifest into figuring out when your Facebook friends are awake?
I think I definitely started to collect, the first time that I saw that data was there, I was like, oh, I've got to collect this and do something creepy. There's definitely something cool to do there. And I don't think I got the sleeping idea until I saw I didn't. It was after I saw a graph. No, it was before I saw the graphs. I think I got the idea that's right. When I saw, if it was in the morning and I was on Facebook and I saw somebody was last online 5 hours ago, and it's currently 8 in the morning. And so I know, it's currently 8 in the morning now, 5 hours ago it's 3 a.m. So this person was up till 3 a.m. and I just know this about them. And they didn't tell me, and I didn't ask to be told this, it's just there. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And I guess that's kind of the manual version of what I ended up making, is if you just happen to notice, you can figure out when someone went to sleep, probably, assuming they check Facebook close to the time when they go to sleep, which I think most people do.
So in order to start doing this at scale, there were some steps that we haven't really touched on. I mean, you wrote a script to do this, or you wrote several scripts. One part of this is you talk about copying a network request using Chrome's developer tools. Can you describe what you were talking about with that network request? Is that the poll? The poll?
Yeah, it is, sure. But before we move on, I think I feel uncomfortable with you saying doing this at scale. This is not at scale. This is just one kid with a laptop, and little, this is one process in a tmux window, and if it dies, I have to restart it. This is not at scale. Anyway, the network request thing. So Chrome's developer tools are great, and everyone knows that. Some people feel like they're held ransom by Chrome's great developer tools, so they can't switch to another browser. I don't feel like that. As you might have noticed in Chrome, you can, when you inspect element, there's also this tab that's called network, and it tells you all the different stuff that this page is requesting. So it'll tell you all the CSS it's downloading, or images or videos or whatever. And there's each of the items there is a network request. And sometimes you see that your browser made a network request, and it's oh, it made a request to this URL with this data, with this cookie. And you're like, well, now I want to make that network request. And you could, like, open up wget or curl or Python and like get the endpoint and like copy and paste your cookies in. But somebody at Google thought about this and thought people might want to do this. And so you can right click on any request and say, copy this as a curl command. You can copy it as a bunch of other things too, but curl's the one I used. And that lets you just paste into a terminal exactly that same network request that was sent. And so that includes like all your cookies. So if you do this and you paste it in your terminal, your Facebook cookie is now in your bash history. So make sure you clear that if anyone else is on there, because they can use that to log in to Facebook as you. And it also gives you, when you copy as curl, it also gives you all the HTTP headers for free as well. And lets you, like, not only do you get to replay the request, sure, but you also get exactly what was sent as part of that request. And so you can be like, oh, that's interesting. Here's what I told Facebook and here's what it gave me back.
So what did you do with that request that curl command? Did you put it into a script at that point?
The first thing I did was be like, well, this is never going to work because, this is a live updates thing and I'm just going to run it at the wrong time and it's going to have a sequence number and it's going to have checksums and stuff. But then I ran it and it did work. And I was like, oh, okay, that was easy. And yeah, I think what I did was, I didn't actually want to use curl to build my thing. I could have some ridiculous bash script or cron job or something and use curl. But I wrote a tiny Python script to like rip out of the curl format all the cookies and stuff, which in retrospect, maybe I should have just done by hand. I wasn't sure whether I was automating myself out of a job or automating myself into a job. And but yeah, once I had all the main reason I wanted that request is because it had all the HTTP headers and all the cookies ready for me in copy pastable format, because I was actually going to do this in Python, so I just needed a place to store all that data. So I turned the cookies and the headers and stuff into Python dictionaries and put them straight into the code. Which, fun fact, I noticed that at the beginning you introduced this project as being called the five Zs.
Yes.
That was not the original name for this thing. The original name was Stalky. And the reason I had to make the 5Zs one is because I tried really hard to not do this, but I did screw up and accidentally commit my personally identifiable information, like my Facebook user ID, or I think the Facebook user ID made it through to the end product. Not so worried about that, but I did definitely accidentally commit my Facebook cookie at some point. And I was like, well, that's not okay. Not putting that on the internet. And so there's still a private repo somewhere that has that in there, which I should probably take down.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So before we get into the graphing part, were there any other interesting parts of the data collection process?
There was. Yeah, there was. So I was trying to automate, do the automatic pulling, and I used the Python requests library because it's the best way to try and talk HTTP in Python. If you're using urllib or urllib2, you're living in the past. And I noticed that it couldn't handle the streaming, the long polling get request. Like it was expecting something that would just instantly return, rather than do this slow 10-second long thing and get data along the way. So I started using. Requests had thought of this, and they had this iterator that you could use that would iterate over 32 bytes of the response at a time, and you could, I would use that and build up a thing and build up a list and then use that list later and all that. And I did that, and it was kind of working sometimes, but then my network would drop out partway through and it would crash because it's not got a full 32 bytes, or it would do something crazy and break. And I was like, man, this is really annoying. And I could see that there was a parameter that's being sent to Facebook called mode with value stream. So I'm telling Facebook, please give me stream mode. I'm saying I'm digging myself into this hole, but I don't know. This is not a real API. It's not documented anywhere. I don't know what the other modes are. I don't know how to say mode equals no stream. I don't know what to do. So eventually I was just like, well, I'm just going to not include the mode parameter. Maybe stream is not the default. And then it totally worked and stopped streaming. And I was like, nice, and deleted all my crazy chunk iterating code thing and just did a usual get. And I was like, yes.
Nice. That's very interesting. So, okay, I want to talk about the graphing, because now that you had all this data aggregated, you had to graph it, and you had many graphing libraries to choose from. So what graphing library did you decide to use?
Oh, man, you know how I feel about graphing libraries, but I guess we can talk about this. So I ended up using... By the way, I only made a couple of graphs for the blog post, and that was it. Like the whole reason I was making graphs at all was so I could put it in the blog post and show people. Like I don't use this thing. I don't go randomly look at my friends. That's creepy. What are you guys doing that? Anyway, I ended up using NVD3JS, which is a wacky. So there's D3JS, which lots of people know about, which is like a graphing library, and NVD3 is made by some other company or something. I'm not really sure. Somebody just told me if I don't use it, I'm a fraud. And so I was like, well, okay, let's use this graphing library, and it actually generates the graphs client side. So as in, you just pass in the data in you provide the data at a URL, I think, and you say, here's the data, NVD3, and it will generate the graph client side on their computer, as opposed to generating images on the server, which is kind of what I started with.
And describe the graphs that actually resulted from this data.
Not pretty enough, considering how much effort went into them. So what they actually were a bunch of line graphs, and this is a kind of hard data visualization problem, because I was like, how do I show you, like, when you're looking at this, you kind of want to know, are they online at this time?
Well, did you know what you wanted to convey with your data?
Yeah, well, what you want to convey is, I want to know when my friends, I want to know when these people are on Facebook. But then when you say on Facebook, I could just give you that overall, like, top level status thing, and you just get one line, and you see here they're online, here they're offline, and here they're idle. But maybe you care whether they're online on their phone or on their computer, right? So you can figure stuff out about people depending on, if they're on their phone, they might be out. If they're on their computer, I know they're not out. Oh, that's interesting. So I was like, well, I could make this crazy single line that, like, in fact, I wrote code to do this, and you can go and turn it on if you want, that, like, will give you the highest status type that they have. So if they're online on the desktop, that's the highest. And if they're on mobile, that's the second highest. And then the app and the other are lower than that. And it will give you the biggest one that they're online on. So it kind of tried to convey everything in one line. But I did that, and nobody knew what I was talking about, including me. And I was like, this is meant for computers, not for humans. So eventually I made 4 or 5 lines. I can't remember how many statuses there are. I made one line for each status. And the x-axis is time, and the y-axis is how online they are for that status. I know, maybe you're thinking there's only online and offline. Well, think again. That you can be online, you can be offline, but you can also be a few things in between. You can be offline, online, invisible, active, invisible or idle. And to this day, I don't know the difference between online and invisible. It's called invisible because they don't want you to be able to tell if someone's, like, pretending to be offline or actually offline. But why is there also an online status? Why is there also an offline status? Maybe that's for if you don't have the thing installed at all. Oh, I'm not really sure. And anyway, the graphs are a bunch of colorful lines, and you can click to turn off the lines and turn on the lines, and you can zoom in and stuff. And I hope people appreciate that zooming and clicking, because it took way too long to actually make.
I tried that. It's a great feature.
Yes.
So how many people did you make graphs of, and did you show these people your graphs?
Yeah, so I was like, well, now I have this way to make these creepy graphs of anyone who's friends with me, and they don't even know about it. So I'm going to try and do this in the least creepy way possible. So I got a random sample of people I know, and no, I didn't actually randomly do it. I chose with my brain a bunch of people I know, did not generate any random numbers. And I said, hey, I made this blog post. I'm making these creepy graphs. Here's a graph. This graph is you. Look at it. Isn't that cool? It's your graph. And they were like, this is really creepy. And I think in the blog post you can see some of the interviews with the people. And I asked more than 3 people. Like, there's 3 people in the blog post, but I asked more than 3 people because I didn't want anyone to know who these people were at the end, right? So if I asked 3 people. And like I said, I had told some people who other people that I'd asked, right? I told some of the people, I also asked this person. So I asked, I think, 5 or 6 people, and I only put 3 of them in the blog post, so that way people can't actually, you don't even know if you were in the blog post, although they might remember what their graph looks like. Anyway, I told all these people, hey, I'm making this creepy blog post. I need somebody to put in there. I awkwardly can't do this on myself because Facebook doesn't tell you when you're online. So can I put you in here? It's going to have this graph. It's going to be forever. People are going to be able to record it or write it down. Everyone will know that this person was online or offline at this time. And they won't know it was you, but might be able to figure out later that it was you or something. But your name's not there. Your Facebook user ID is not there. And they're like, whatever, Alex, I don't care about your ridiculous OPSEC precautions. Sure, go for it.
So what happened when you discussed these graphs with the people? Like, were they, I know these are in the blog post, these interviews, but How did people respond? Were they appalled, or did they not really care?
I think most of the people, some of the people I talked to, they were just like, "Oh, that's cool, whatever," and they're like, "That's really cool. It's a graph of me," and they didn't really get the privacy implications. They were just like, "Oh yeah, that's me." And other people were like, "Wow, that's really creepy," because like I did wake up at that time, and you asked me if I did, and I didn't tell you that I woke up, but you knew. That's creepy, and you can do this to anyone. Maybe I should stop being friends with you on Facebook. Maybe I should delete Facebook. Maybe I should do something else. I don't think anyone was outraged. I mean, maybe they were, but not to my knowledge.
What other conclusions did you draw from these graphs?
I kind of stopped when I got the, like, you can figure out when someone's awake or asleep, because I was like, well, that's like the main point. That's really cool. People care about that. And there's a blog post right there. But some of the other stuff that I noticed was you can also tell who's on Facebook during work hours if you work, right? Because you can see exactly when they're online, right? And so some people, if you look at their graph, they're like online in the morning and in the evening. But some people are online all day. And it's like, oh, are they just online on their phone? And no, you can see that they have like a web session as well. So like using that, you can guess that they probably have Facebook on their work computer, right? Because otherwise, did they bring their laptop to work? I don't think so. So I'm not sure what you can do with the fact that they have Facebook on their work computer, like as in they're logged in on their work computer. I don't know what kind of hacks you're going to do with that information. Maybe one of your listeners can figure it out.
Yeah, I hope so. But I'd love to talk about the implications of this. Do you think that as a third-party developer, you should be able to perform this kind of analysis?
It's not as I guess I'm a third-party developer because I'm not Facebook. And like one thing I feel like I should point out is that you can only do this to people that you are Facebook friends with. You can't do this to any random person on Facebook. They have to already be your Facebook friend. I mean, that might not mean a lot to lots of people because some people just YOLO add everybody in the whole world. And like, do I think you should be able to do this? I mean, I thought about it and I was like, well, I mean, this is kind of creepy. I would like for people to not be able to do this to me. And I think lots of people would like to not be able to do this. I think lots of people would like to be, protected against this. And I mean, one way is to not use Facebook at all, but I think a lot of people like Facebook, so they're probably not going to do that. And I was thinking about it, and the reason that it works is because of the last active time feature. Like, it will tell you when they're last active, and also because of it's a chat program. You can see when your friends are online and stuff. And so, I mean, if you're going to make a chat program without those features, I guess it's kind of not much of a chat program, right? As in, I'm sure the smart people at Facebook thought about this. I think they realized that, hey, you could scrape this data and collect it and build creepy graphs. I think somebody thought of that in advance before they made this feature. And I guess they decided that it was worth the trade-off, right? It was worth the privacy trade-off to be able to have this cool feature. And Facebook chat is it's like the gold standard for chat programs, right? It's got all the features everyone likes. It's a good chat program. And I guess one of the things that makes it good is this feature, but it kind of has this awkward privacy trade-off.
Yeah. Do you think there's any way that they could have architected it to prevent this kind of thing?
I was thinking about that. I mean, one kind of weird side effect of me doing this at all is that because my little bot thing is always online and it's using my Facebook cookie because I don't have any other Facebook cookies, I'm always online on Facebook on the overall status anyway. I think my phone status goes on and off, but I haven't actually checked because I can't check myself because I'm not friends with myself. I should really make a fake Facebook account and check with that. Although actually you can't. You're not allowed to make fake Facebook accounts. It's in their bug bounty terms of service. So yeah.
So with this project, were you trying to make any particular statement, or were you just messing around?
Oh no, I'm very much just a kid with a laptop. I'm not here to say things.
Is that tongue in cheek, or is that entirely true? Do you really not have any opinion on this, or any projections about what this says about the future, or?
I mean, I'm over 18, so I guess I'm not a kid, or over 21 if you're in America. And I do have a laptop, and I did use a laptop to make this. But why did I make the blog post? I guess I just made it because I thought other people would think this was cool, right? I made it and I thought it was cool that you could do this in the first place and that you could look at the graphs and you could find out stuff about people. I was like, this is kind of cool, but also really creepy because people can find it out about you without your consent, right? People can just do it. I mean, you have to be their Facebook friend, but most people don't consent to, sure, I'll be your Facebook friend and also let you stalk when I'm online. I kind of don't think about that part. And yeah, I just made the blog post because, I mean, I was kind of, when I first started doing it, I was hoping, oh, maybe Facebook will see this and they'll see that it's like bad and then they'll change it and fix it somehow. But then, like, as I thought about it more, it's like, well, how are they going to fix it? They could give you an invisible status, I guess. They could make it so it doesn't show when you're online. But like, kind of this feature of like the last active time thing, it's like a feature people use on their chat program. So maybe it's not worth the time to make it, right? Like maybe they make more money with this feature on. I imagine they do, because they get more engagement on like Messenger.
Throughout your post, there was this motif of NSA, like role playing as the NSA. It was kind of funny, but it's also like kind of serious because like NSA could probably do this with far fewer Chrome Web Tool inspection stuff than you did.
They have the easy way.
They have the easy way, right? And so, but like, do people care? Do millennials care, or does anybody care? Like, should we care
about the fact that people can do this to you?
Yes.
I mean, one of the things I was thinking about is it's completely reasonable that Facebook can do this to you, right? Because they're Facebook and you log into their chat thing. And of course they know when you log in because they make it. That's fine. And then like, okay, by extension, the NSA can also probably do this to you. And it's like, well, all right, that's what you get for having Facebook. But should your friends be able to do this to you? I mean, I would like it if my friends could not do this to me. Because I'd like it if nobody had creepy graphs of like exactly when I'm awake and when I'm asleep, assuming that I'm on Facebook at the right times. I'm not actually sure. But do other people care? I think they don't really care. They just go like, oh yeah, whatever, Facebook privacy, whatever, it's a trade-off. And then someone shows them like, hey, here's a graph of you and here's when you're awake and hey, here's when you went in the lift and your phone turned off and like, oh, you feeling tired today? Can I help you out? Like, You could using this thing, you could, instead of making graphs, which I did, you could make a thing which like emails you every morning, being like, hey, these people were up till 3 a.m. and they're really sleepy today. So now you know that about them. Like, I think people care once they realize it can happen to them.
Yeah, you could just sell it to advertisers.
Oh man, I didn't even think of that.
Oh, well, you got a
actually,
business.
No, you couldn't, because advertisers aren't people's Facebook friends, right? I guess you could sell out your friends to advertisers.
Well, there are those huge networks of bots, of bot accounts, Facebook bot accounts, that could maybe be using this, and many of those bots have legitimate friends.
Yeah, I mean, if you made a Facebook bot and added a whole bunch of people and started making graphs of all of them and sold which of them are sleepy to advertisers or which of them are like what their sleep cycles are like, oh, I feel a terrible startup idea being formed.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but so what about you yourself? Like, do you have any opinions on like NSA data gathering, surveillance states, Snowden stuff?
Oh man, so political. It's a hard problem, right? Like, it's kind of like one of the problems with having somebody be a spy agency and having them collect all this let me explain it in terms of something that I'm sure is extremely inaccessible to your listeners, which is recently in Australia, which is where I'm from, the government started making data retention laws. So your internet service provider has to keep records of stuff that you do. And the motivation is, it's mostly for catching criminals and stuff because it's really useful for us to know like what IP address some criminal had at some certain time so we can prove they went to this website. And that's okay. All right. Fair enough. And it's also one of the interesting things is how it can kind of go wrong. So there's kind of good intentions in this data retention thing, right? Because it's like, well, I mean, we're going to use it to catch bad guys. All right. The thing is, though, that in the things that ISPs are required to keep, something that's not there is the destination IP address. That's who you're talking to. So they're required to keep like what time it was and who you are and what IP address you have, but they're not required to store who you're talking to, which is good because if they did store who you were talking to, they would have like kind of your browsing history, right? They wouldn't say which URLs exactly, but they know which sites you went to. The thing is, though, say you're just some random sysadmin working at some ISP, and somebody tells you, oh, the government says we got to start storing all this stuff about people, and they're like, oh, I got to make a new database. Oh, boy, there's a lot of data there, getting salty about that. But then they're like, well, the data we have currently is just everything, and like maybe it's more convenient. Maybe we can save time. Maybe we can be more agile if we just store everything, right? Because that'll be easier because we don't have to do a bunch of dev work to store more stuff. And so now maybe they're not storing everything. Maybe they are. Let's just say that somebody somewhere has the important data, the secret data about people. That's all fine, but how much do you trust their security? Like, how much do you trust nobody to be able to break into their thing? I don't know. I don't know, but generally, like, trust is not a word that we use in the security world because it's often followed by regrets.
Yeah. So, I mean, what kinds of feedback have you gotten from this blog post? Has anybody chimed in with any interesting opinions, or what kinds of feedback have you gotten from this blog post?
Mostly a bunch of people on Hacker News analyzing my writing style, and I was like, okay, that's all right. People being like, oh, this guy is clearly very self-deprecating, or oh, maybe this guy is from Australia, he's got Australian humor.
It was a funny blog post. It was pretty funny.
Thanks, I guess. Thanks. So I don't like on. Most of the reactions I've got have been like, hey, that was a cool blog post. I don't think anyone's had there have been kind of few complicated political reactions being like, oh, this is a thing, Facebook should fix it, maybe they shouldn't fix it. Nobody's really commenting on the actual content of the thing because they're all like, hey, nice making fun of Hacker News people. And it's like, well, okay, thank you. I've had people being like, come on my podcast. No, I'm kidding. It's just you.
Well, so has anybody from Facebook contacted you?
No, I don't think so. I have a couple of friends who work at Facebook, and I did give them a cheeky @Facebook friends in the blog post, being like, I don't know what this is. Maybe you can tell me. But that never works because, when someone's like, oh, you work at Facebook, do you know this person? No. Do you know this person? No. What about this person? No, I don't know anyone. Also, I work in a team that's completely different to the thing you're talking about. So I'm kind of not surprised. And no, I haven't had anyone from Facebook reach out and be like, you are now banned or whatever it is. I don't know. I'm sure I've violated the terms of service somewhere in there.
Yeah. Do you think we're headed for a world of constant surveillance?
I think there are some people who would like that to be true. Possibly we're already in one, right? It depends what you think surveillance is. Like, for me, I have a couple of websites, and if you just look at the web server access log, you can see which IP address visited, when did they visit, what did they look at. That's cool. And mostly that's fine because it's just IP addresses. But depending on how much surveillance you want, depending on what you think is surveillance, people kind of accidentally surveil each other, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because a lot of times this conversation centers around these trade-offs between privacy and security. And people say, well, we should give up privacy to have more security, or we should give up security to have more privacy. But it seems like potentially there's room for solutions that have more privacy and more security, or I don't know, in the case of Facebook, more privacy and more utility. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I think the slider is kind of different. Like, you're talking about a slider with privacy. I think of it like a slider on a form that you drag. You're talking about a slider with privacy at one end and security at the other end. Yeah. I kind of group them into the same thing and put privacy/security at the same end, and on the other end of that slider is convenience. Right? So, say you're logging into a website and it's like, hey, log in, choose your email address. And you're like, oh, okay, here's my email address. Hey, choose a password. No, not that password. No, you need to have this. No, you need to have this other thing. And it's like, okay, all right, fine. Here's my really secure password. And it's like, hey, make sure you set up your two-factor auth codes. Make sure you can, install this app so we can send you random codes so you can log in. And that's called an exit point in a marketing language, which is kind of a point where in your flow of someone looking into your product where they be like, I don't care about this enough to keep going, right? So some people like to play with that slider. A really, really secure site is a really, really secure, really private thing is there is no site. You can't log into it. There's nothing there. But hey, you can't get hacked, right? And a really, really convenient one is there's no authentication. Everyone can just log in as everyone else, or maybe you don't log in. Maybe everyone just posts anonymously, right? But then there's no way to know who anyone is, and there's no way to like monitor who's doing what, right? Like that's the full convenience end of the slider.
So you mentioned this earlier that the post was something of a maybe not directly making fun of Hacker News, but it kind of poked fun at kind of the Hacker News ethos or some of the ways that people talk on Hacker News, the ways that people interact. What do you think of the Hacker News culture? I mean, it's really developed into quite a significant media outlet that affects how technologists think and process information.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I used to read it a lot more when I was in maybe first year or second year uni, and I think they have a lot of like uni students on there, but I'm not sure. And I don't know, it's kind of like any kind of thing where things are sorted by upvotes. So like Reddit or like Facebook, if it's sorted by likes, or anything where like the thing that the most people click a button on is like the thing at the top, kind of tends to become an echo chamber after some point, where like there are certain opinions or there are certain particular things that everyone likes because they're the things that everyone sees, because they're the things that everyone votes on, and so on. So like on Hacker News, it's always this like, it's either something political to do with the NSA, because Hacker News loves the drama, or it's like my new swag JavaScript library so it's way better than the other JavaScript library from before. It's it's totally different.
So did you stop? Have you stopped reading Hacker News, or like you just don't read it as much?
I guess not as much. Yeah, I don't know. I guess not as much. Maybe I don't know. I mean, I'm not using Rust or Go or any of the actionable swag languages, and sometimes on Hacker News it's just a link to a Wikipedia page, and it's just like, check out this sick Wikipedia page for like how TCP works, something, and it's like thousands of upvotes, and it's like, really? I mean, it's a cool Wikipedia page, but like, really?
Yeah, very interesting. There are some weird things that trend sometimes. Okay, well, I want to start to wrap up. I mean, can you tell me a little bit more about yourself, or like, and maybe an interesting engineering story that occurred in your life recently?
Sure. So let's see. I'm 23. We already talked about that. I went to Sydney University and did a Google internship briefly, and now I work at Atlassian doing security something. And an interesting engineering story. What have I? Oh, okay. All right, this is going to be kind of elaborate, but it's a complete hack, and I love to talk about it. So, okay, here's some free Atlassian plugging. At Atlassian, we have like a hackathon every so often. It's called Ship It in 24 hours, and you can do whatever you want for that. They're like, go and do whatever you want. Like maybe vaguely make it something to do with Atlassian, but like the rules are there are no rules. And so we wanted to make there was this page we have where it's like a form that you fill out, and it gives somebody that you think did a good job. It gives them like a $30 gift card for a thing of their choice, right? We have that thing in Atlassian where you can like, if you like what someone does, you can fill out a form and they get a gift card, and from Atlassian. And the form that you fill out is kind of like, could use some UX improvements, right? Like you have to enter the same information multiple times. Like you have to enter like a few things multiple times. And there's some things that are almost always going to be the same, like their location in the world and your location in the world. Like sometimes you do like international ones, but usually it's in the same office. And so we were like, well, this form could be kind of easier. And we also put a whole bunch of so firstly we made the form easier so that it, we made less fields, and it would figure out the fields that you wanted to get. And we also did some random natural language processing so there's a whole bunch of different gifts people can get. And there's this like random page that has, each person can fill out and add what gifts they want. And it's completely free-form text. They can say, I like movies, get me a movie thing. Or if it's Monday, give me this thing. And if it's Tuesday, give me this thing. They can say whatever they want. And so we wrote a thing that would like read that and try and guess what they actually want. And so you just type in someone's name and it guesses what they want to, have. And so like that's what the thing does. Here's the interesting thing about it. The form is hosted on the same domain as a company Confluence is. Confluence is a place where you can like make pages and blog posts and stuff. And so I was like, the form's hosted on the same domain as the blog posts. And there's this feature that you can turn on in Confluence, which enables an HTML macro. And so that is what you think it is. It lets you like write HTML in your Confluence pages, and also lets you write. There's also an SQL macro. It lets you write SQL in your Confluence pages. We were like, well, this is cool. I wonder if we can, hey, wait a minute, the HTML macro is on the same, like the blogs are on the same domain as this form, which means it's same origin policy compliant, and we can like look through these iframes, and so skip a few steps, and at the end of the day, we implemented this new form with this with the natural language processing that would check the other forms. It would like do database queries to like check which location people are in, and it would like have like it had ridiculous confetti raining down and like a dial that you would turn to do things because I don't know why not. And the thing was implemented as a blog post, right? Like there's no servers, there was no like scripts, there was no file, there was no file. This entire thing is a blog post with a bazillion macros and like lots of like hacky JavaScript to like inject stuff into the iframes because you can look through the iframe because it's on the same domain, the same origin policy compliant. And yeah, at the end of the day, everyone was like, "Why did you do this as a blog post?" And we were like, "I don't know. I just thought it would be novel."
That's funny. So the incidental irony is something that you work into a lot of your programming projects, apparently.
I think that would be fair to say.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, Alex, thanks for coming on the show. This has been super interesting, and Alex's project is open sourced as ZZZZZ. And what is your GitHub name?
Default name here.
Default name here. Okay, so if you want to check out this project you can use to stalk, can you still use it to stalk your Facebook or to look at your Facebook friends' awake status?
I haven't looked at it in like basically since the blog post come out.
Okay.
But I assume it's still running.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's been fun.